This is Eric for week 2, and today we're going to be going over directory trees, how to create them, and how to use them. For most people, directory trees, if you're not familiar with them, would be what's used when a filing system is first operated on a system, when it's first installed. They'll be created automatically by the Windows system. If you're using a different operating system, such as, say, Linux for example, or Mac, it'll use similar, but not exactly the same, although the concept is still fairly similar. For today's representation, what we'll be using is we'll be using Windows 7. Actually, creating a directory is fairly simplistic. The older methods are a bit different. The ones for Windows 7 are much more simplistic, and since my operating system is Windows 7, I will be using Windows 7 to demonstrate the purposes, structures, and how to create a directory tree. For starters, what is a directory tree? With this nifty little example that I have here, here we go, you can see that it first starts out showing my computer, then goes into local disk C, games, additional folder, additional folder. Now, for most people, this will be the same starting up from local disk C, assuming that you have a singular drive. C being the root drive. If you go back here, you can see all of your regular folders. Here you have about 20 folders, various additional files, and these are all basic ones that Windows sets through. And several of the additional ones you'll notice, for example, are different. For example, this one here. This one is Boss, which is a side program that I've installed just for the purpose of showing additional directories. You can see here there's additional folders. This goes into additional links. And here at the top it continues to spread out and give you more folders. The purpose of a directory tree is that at any point I can look at this bar, decide that I want to go back to something. For example, I choose that I want to go back all the way back to here, and I can go straight back all the way back to my root drive, which is now C. If I decide that I want to go into something else, for example, let's say that I want to go into this folder down here, which is just another game. Go down 4 files in, you can see the folders start getting larger and larger depending on what's available, how many folders there are in it, and each broken down into their own subsection. So obviously it has its own uses depending on what programs are being used, where the files are going, and what its intended purpose is. However, if you want to create something for yourself, why would you do it, and where would it go? So let's go back to C. We're now back to C. Here we have all our basic functions. This back out of the way, and here's your desktop. Completely clear, nothing on it. However, if you were to do a right click, for example right click, you now have additional options. Your regular ones, which are view, paste, go down to new, and you have a listing of additional options. You can make a new document, you can make new zip files, new folders. In this case we're going to do a new folder, and we're just going to name this one test1. Now, test1 by itself isn't technically a directory tree. It is part of one because of the fact that the directory tree is already there, so it's automatically part of the desktop. However, if we were to open it up, obviously we see there's nothing in it. Now, if we were to do the same thing and add an additional one, for example, pictures, and then we open an additional one up, create another one, we'll name this one movies. And then we'll take an additional one here, just for kicks, we'll name this one music. Okay, so now we have pictures, music, movies. Now let's say, for example, we look at this, we know it's available from the desktop, we decide we want to sit there and, say, watch a movie. Go to movies. Now, in by itself, it's just movies. That's broad. So we open another folder. We take this new folder. We'll label it horror. Another folder. Action. Open up another folder. Comedy. And so on and so forth, and we can keep opening these up. Now, let's say, for example, we choose comedy, and we go into comedy. And right now this would be telling you that we're in our test folder, we're under movies, we're under comedy. So if we were to go down this directory tree and it actually had movies, it would actually be going down to the comedy section. Kind of similar as if you'd went down to say music, movies, decided you wanted to look up something by genre, and you were able to look it up this way. You can do the same thing with file directory. Now, Now that we're actually in this section here for comedy, we have a few additional options. We can look at this folder by itself and say, alright, this one here is going to be its individual section, just comedy. Or you can farther sit there and denote it down, 1960, and then break it down by year. And then we can open up another folder and bring that up, 1970s. Or we can just label it whatever we want for whichever year or whichever subject. Or for example, we could change this, and instead of doing years, we could sit there and go Bill Murray and go movies by Bill Murray under comedy. And then we can go under Bill Murray and look up movies that we would have that would be listed by Bill Murray, assuming you actually had the movie. Now, this in itself is a fairly simplistic process. Just right-click, create a folder, and it remembers the folder. But how does this relate down to our original aspect of the folders that were already there? Where does this come into play? So, we go back to our original section. We look back. Here's our C drive. Go back to C drive. Go back to desktop. We look here. Here's our test folder. It comes right back up. It's on our desktop. It's on our test folder. And there we have it. We can sit there and place things where we want it to go, how we want it to go, and we can sit there and use it for ease of use, for when we want to find something easier, without having to dig through the entire hard drive to find it. And that would be the use of a directory tree, how to make one, how to use one, and the importance it can be for finding information, and also your movies.